with more, right?
Because more people here.
Even on that day, so if I purchase from Home Depot at my house,
When it
and
sells
then
your
I go
house.
pick it up, I just want to sell, right?
If you pick it up, then it's, if you have them deliver it, it's. Yeah, I mean, so.
Mayor, we're ready.
Okay.
Is Jared coming?
Okay.
Amen.
He sent us a text saying that he's stuck.
He's in a meeting till like 7.
So he's gonna try and jump on at some point, but he's not sure.
Amen. I just heard her say.
Okay, we good? Okay, welcome to our work meeting for February 23rd. Appreciate everybody being here. Gonna get right into it on item 1.1. Review of this evening's agenda. Any questions, any?
So I just one note, Mayor.
Conference will now be recorded.
Pretty sure we were done really early last 2 weeks ago, so it's a challenge to.
Thanks. Thank you for conducting last week. Thank you. I'll have you do it every week if we get out of that. Any other movement on the agenda, any concerns, questions? Okay, future agenda items, anybody like to see any items to put on future agendas?
Mayor, I know I messaged you, there's a lot of activity in the community such as awards. We just had a cross-country winner take state out of Mountain Ridge, stuff like that. I'd like to maybe have a spot in the agenda to recognize local talent. If it's an art show that they won, somebody won at the state capitol last week as well. So just to recognize the youth or somebody significant that wins an award or a sport.
Or Olympians.
Olympians, yes.
Yeah.
When I put that, I thought maybe we could create almost a citizen recognition program, but we bring it to work meetings every week, and then I'd like to focus, I love that Riverton does that, they seem to really focus on that in their work meetings, so maybe almost have that in a running agenda item, and just, citizen recommend, and then if we have something, we'll bring it up for the next council meeting, I like it. Okay, everybody okay with that?
So,
Yeah.
just so I'm clear for staff, we'll talk about stuff in the work meeting, but then if you wanna do recognition, we'll actually bring it probably in section 7, I would guess, in the presentations or ceremony.
Yeah. Just so we can bring it up here and talk about it before, just make sure it's something we wanna recognize.
Yeah.
Just real fast, that'll be a brief agenda item, but there's a lot going on, but
Yeah.
we'd like to.
Would you wanna do that under future agenda items, or do you want us to call that out specifically? I'm just trying to help Jackie, cause we're either gonna add a section or just,
Or it could be a 1.3 council business.
We could do it as a 1.3, however, that would be a future agenda item, because it wouldn't be for that same night,
No, it'd be the
correct?
next one, yeah.
So it would be sufficient to talk about it under future meetings.
Right.
So 1.2
if you want to call it out, we can do it.
Yeah, we absolutely could call it out if the council chose to do so.
If I'm being honest with myself, I'll just forget if we don't have it on there. Okay.
We could also put it as a running thing on, the meeting outline,
Oh, yeah.
to just, for a reminder for
Okay.
council.
I'm okay with that too.
What about under like 4.2 with the city council comments and recognitions, if they have someone that they want
That's where it should.
to recognize?
Well, I think that's where it's gonna be in the regular meeting.
Yeah,
I'm just,
for the regular
I think we're saying bring it up in,
a work meeting too?
Well, I think we wanna make sure that we're clear of who we're gonna recognize and why,
There
And
might
you
be
wanted to invite them out?
and then invite them,
and then have.
give them the opportunity to invite out.
So if we heard about like this.
The cross-country runner or the art guy from Mountain Ridge as well, it was their first art contest, he won, he was recognized at the Capitol, one of the 50 people out of the state or something.
It
I
might
think
be-
the idea is just council approves it and then we invite them for the next one,
Yeah.
and then recognize it officially.
It might be
Try not to
awkward if we didn't approve
What's that?
someone. So how would that work?
That is
guess
the
we
down,
just-
if you miss somebody, do you hurt feelings, you cause issues?
Yeah, I just don't, I wouldn't want to, in the work meeting, I wouldn't think that we would decide not to recognize someone.
Do we just,
No, but I think it's,
I think you
it's,
just determine
determine that we are going to do it.
without putting them on
Got
the
it.
future agenda.
Okay, however you guys think.
maybe.
I think that, my take is, 4.2 gives us pretty large latitude in who we're gonna recognize or what we're gonna
Yeah.
speak about, and so I don't think there is, any constraints on any council member acknowledging or recognizing recognizing anybody they want.
Sure.
So
You're right.
you don't really need everybody else's consent or approval to recognize whoever you want there.
Can it be handled even with just an email saying, hey,
I
this
was gonna say-
happened, I'm gonna make sure I notice, I'm gonna talk about this, just so everybody's aware.
So this would be individual counselors, so it's not the city recognizing
Yeah.
something, cause that would be a different, right? If the
Yeah.
city wanted to recognize, then you would wanna.
But I would like to see the city recognizing though. What do you, I mean, that's kind of where I was thinking.
That's so, I mean, I always put something out there on the famous Herriman page about, but there's been no comments, right? Because people are all self-absorbed in their own little sphere, but you see the state winners, you see, like, we recognize the rugby team, right? We recognized, the soccer teams when they win these special events. I think it happens all the time and people just don't get recognized enough. Say a local restaurant wins a certain award or, something like that, or a club sport goes to national championships, I don't know. I think it just calls for a little bit extra.
Agreed. The
Make it
question
more
is how to
official,
do it,
I'd like to see it more officially recognized.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm open to suggestions, but it's just one of those things.
So if I might, I think what we can do is put it on here as one point, you can talk about it, and there's nothing that stops a counselor from
Absolutely.
recognizing under 4.2, but if you wanted to recognize a sports team, like we did with the rugby team,
Yeah.
we might be able to do that. If we put it under a special, you could do a proclamation, whatever it is, something that recognizes them
That's
for
gonna
their
work.
effort.
4.2A.
Yeah, that's what it is.
All this talent around here, you're gonna be doing it all the time.
Yeah, you might be.
Seriously, that's,
Yeah, that's awesome.
and that's what's great, there's so much and I don't think we recognize it
Yeah.
enough.
I think there's merit in that just talking about all the great things going on in our community, right? By individuals and groups and
Well, and just because you know about it doesn't mean I know about it, or
Right.
even, you know what I mean, so it's nice if we can all kind of get on the same page with it too, cause there's a lot of things like, oh, really, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
And maybe we just have a policy that if it's brought up, we recognize them, because it's one person wanting to recognize them. That way it's not, we're not shutting it down, it's just, but then we'd make it a city thing rather than
But that gives us an opportunity to reach out and
Yep.
get the family here if they want to, or be
absolutely present.
Perfect.
Okay. There's Mud, Jackie, Nathan, you gonna?
Yeah, I
That's
think
about
we're-
as clear as I am.
So we're just gonna add a 1.3 that's, we'll come up with the
Future
title for it,
recognition
yeah,
or something, future.
council discussion of recognitions or something like that, you can. We'll get it on there.
Obviously, we're not trying to make it more complicated, we're just trying to recognize some people. Okay. I've got a few, if anybody else have any other future agenda items? Sherry?
No, go ahead.
I don't think Jared mentioned anything in his text. I've got a few things. For next time, I would like to see in the work meeting, kind of a follow-up from our strategic meeting last week. I was in here yesterday and Tammy pulled up, mentioned something, this might predate all of us in here, maybe a little bit, but the council used to have a top 5. And I know we struggled last week kind of thinking what could our goals be. The city used to have a top 5, and that was their goals. And then underneath each of those, there were sub-goals that were basically each department had. And that worked all its way. I mean, and talking to Nathan before, this is kind of where I was hoping to get with the strategic plan last week, is we have these goals and these visions, and then that's how staff knows how to operate. Like, they don't know, if we don't give them some ideas, some direction, I mean, it's hard to know where to go, right? I mean, it's like Nathan said, if we can be efficient, but efficient at what? Or how do I measure with my staff if we're, because the council, that's our job, is to set goals for the vision for this city, where we wanna be. We can do it with if you guys read that, I think it was, Riverton was the first one I saw, that basically, there's the 2 parts. You've got the basic infrastructure that we talked about last week, that's one part, and then the second one is just the strategic plan. So I know it's overwhelming, I think thinking about it is overwhelming, so I would like to bring back those top 5. This is just a suggestion, I would like to bring back those top 5 in a work meeting next week and just see if that's still aligned. It's probably been 4 years, we think, Tammy, since we've looked at those. Did we decide?
Before me, yep.
So bring those top 5, see if that's still where we align. I think it gives us a good starting point. And if these are, I know one was, economic development, I think we would all agree that, and then talking to Nathan, I think you have 2 short-term, 2 medium-term, and then a long-term goal. And I think we could just look at these 5 and just try to, again, I don't think we need a whole, what's that? Yeah, and then call it something different, come up with it.
Some people don't like that name.
What's that?
I think not having a taste in our mouth.
Yeah,
So,
I think they're in the budget document every
Yeah.
year, cause I've read those when
Call
I was just interviewing out here, but I haven't seen a whole lot of direction to those other than
Right.
they're in there.
So I think that just gives us somewhere to start with on these goals, these strategic visions, so. And then I would like, in 4 weeks, I'm just setting myself a goal with this mainly, I would like to bring up the start, I'd like to have the framework for my 2 new committees that I'd like to present. Committee with session wrapping up next week, that gives myself, I've given myself a deadline for 4 weeks to have presentations ready on the outline, so 4 weeks to have those 2 committees. I'm just bringing it up now because I might forget to bring them up.
So second meeting in March.
Second meeting in March. I'm just trying to spread out a few things, because I know this top 5 or whatever is gonna take, or these 5 goals, is gonna take up, could take up some time next week. The,
The inclusion committee.
yeah, the inclusion committee, and then the, what do we call it, the reputation management committee almost?
oh, for businesses.
Businesses and employees, recognize business and employees, yep.
There is one aspect of that we might wanna discuss in a future work meeting, is ways to help and educate our local businesses on how to engage in social media in a more positive way. I talked to some of the leaders of some of the large social media pages here in the community over the past week or two, and got solicited some of their feedback on some things, and they had talked about how there are some business owners who are active and engaging, and they seem to kind of discourage any negative talk about their businesses because they're active and out and visible, and people know who they are and things like that. And so I thought maybe there's a way that we can work on some type of an activity or a summit or a packet or something that would educate our local businesses on, you know, social media engagement being positive, how to, you know, handle complaints, how to, some of them may not even know how to set up to join some of these groups on Facebook and be engaged and see what's going on in our community, so.
What if we were to work, I just had lunch today with Brian, used to be the chair of the chamber, Southwest Valley Chamber. What if we were to work through the chamber? The chamber's looking for ways to get more involved. What if we were to work through the chamber and,
That might be a good
because the
idea.
chamber's asked us how they can support us more. What if we were to work through the
Yeah,
chamber?
I like that idea.
Have
We've
them-
also got the resource at the county, what's her name? She just reached out about
Oh.
the economic development,
Christie.
yeah, Kristen, yeah. And she's eager to help, she's newer, she's 4 or 5 months in the county, in the economic development department, she's been pretty amazing.
Mayor Hall and Bluffdale and I were gonna meet with the Southwest Valley Chamber, and kind of talk about ways, are you okay if we bring that up? Maybe I would like to include
Absolutely.
you in that, and we'll just
Yeah,
maybe
whatever.
bring you into that, and
Yeah.
we'll meet with her and the mayor, Bluffdale, and we'll have them run with that, I think
Yeah,
that's
I'd
what
love
we
to.
do. So I think we've seen that with Garage, I think Jeremy over at Garage is a great example of how he's interactive.
Yeah, he's been awesome, yeah.
He's been good, he's figured right out how to combat the social media.
The snarkiness, yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay, any other future agenda items? Sorry, that usually doesn't take that long. Okay. We'll go on item 2.1, I'm excited about this one. Veterans Memorial Flag Project presentation. We've got the Mountain Ridge High School DECA students here.
We
Wendy?
do, yeah, so they reached out to me, I think it was Lauren that reached out to me first, about this potential project in the end of November.
Yep.
And it's taken us some time to kind of mature the conversation and figure things out, but we wanted to have them in to present to you all and tell you all about their idea and where we're at.
Alright, well, first of all, we want to talk about a little bit, talk about what DECA is. So, Bella's gonna talk.
Yeah, so DECA
Sorry,
is
tell me your names.
I'm Bella Jones.
I'm Emma Joes. I'm Lauren Winterton.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have our PowerPoint? Oh, there we go.
That's what-
Cool. Sweet.
There we go.
Okay, so what is DECA? It's a nonprofit organization. Basically it focuses on like business things, and it just prepares high school and college kids for leadership positions and business opportunities.
Alright, a little bit of a summary of what we are trying to do is essentially just a veterans memorial. We want to be able to honor our local veterans along with just veterans in general and bring a little bit of, in a sense, attraction or traffic to some of our trails and mountains. That's a little bit what Lauren Palmer talked about at our Meet the Candidates event a couple months ago at Mountain Ridge High School. Is he wanted to bring more people onto the trails, and we think this would be a great way to do that.
One of the things we wanted to do leading up to the opening of the memorial is a Veterans Appreciation Day. We just think this is a great way to get people excited about the monument and to spread awareness of it. It's also a really good way to reach out to potential sponsors and maybe drum up some potential donations as well.
Okay, so the location, our initial ideas were to put the flag memorial in the Mustang Loop and Juniper Crest. However, we had some complications. Anthony, I don't know what his position is or what his last name is, but our pal Anthony found some complications with that location, and so we are hoping to be able to place this at the dam in Black Ridge Reservoir.
Alright, so there are other reasons that we want to go forward with this project, one of which being my uncle. My uncle served in the military for a couple years as a medic, and he has inspired me so much, and I just want to be able to honor him in some way, along with my great-grandpa. They're both super great role models, and along with honoring local veterans and just veterans in general, I want to be able to honor them in another way as well.
And for me as well, so my dad is in the military. He's been in the military all of my life, and in 2019 he was deployed to Germany for 9 months. That was over coronavirus, and it was a really struggling time. And during that time, over Christmas and holidays, my family got a lot of support, and this experience led me to just think that we need support for military families, and that we can't just honor the soldiers serving, although we should honor them. Their work's amazing, but the families need support too. And so we think that this memorial can really bring that attraction to not only support the soldiers serving, but the families to just show the local support.
We also wanted to use this as an opportunity to establish new traditions in Herriman. One of the ideas that we had was to have everyone that visits the flag write some sort of message on the rock and leaving it at the monument to show appreciation for any veterans of their family or just that they know.
Alright, so this obviously comes with some benefits. It honors those who protect us, it creates and encourages unity in our community, which I think is incredibly important. Unity, I've experienced unity at school in choir and all the different things I'm involved in, and it's amazing what we can accomplish through that. And so I think just the unity that something like this would bring to Herriman would greatly benefit our community. It also brings interest and people onto the trail systems, like I mentioned earlier.
Okay, so where you come in, city approval, any sponsors, suggested sponsors, permits, any connections that you guys have, we are up for any challenge. We would just love to follow through with this.
A couple of frequently asked questions. So first of all, what will happen when the flags are ordered at half staff? Will someone hike up and lower it? And due to this flag being in a remote area,
From the original
the original plan was going to be in a remote area. That obviously has changed. It'll be a lot more accessible. So we could order it half staff. But yeah, just a Herriman community member to lower the flag. We'll just designate a youth council member or another hiker to perform the duties of the flag. And then how often will a new flag be raised and how will the current flag be disposed of? Until a regular time to change can be identified, the flag will just be changed out as an my goodness, I'm so sorry. Changed out on an as-needed basis, and the tattered flag will be taken to a Boy Scout troop or to the National Guard for proper retirement.
And that's just some of our information. If there are any questions you guys have for us, we would love to answer them. But that is all we have for you.
Yes.
So, thank you for your presentation. I'm gonna send you guys an invite, or Shelley is, to our Veterans Committee. We have it on May 10th, we'll include you guys in that. Also, I know that Colonial Flag has an amazing flag program where they will maintain and switch out and monitor the flag. And so monthly they go by, make sure it's good, and then they switch out. They have you buy 2 flags from them and they just switch it out constantly and repair. So they're a good source. But yeah, this is an awesome thing, so.
Perfect, thank you.
So I have a question, you had a list of things we can help with, first one was approval, but then was if we have any fundraising or things like that.
Yeah, like
What's your
sponsors.
target for fundraising, how much money do you need to raise?
So the 20-foot flag is $1,500 and the 30-foot is $1,900. And then a concrete barrier that we're thinking putting around is $600 approximately.
So you're looking at $2,500, is that about right?
Yeah, probably about
Okay.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
$3,000?
To be safe. And that includes the flag and the pole
Yes.
and
The
installation.
other, do you wanna talk about lighting a little bit?
Yeah, so
Looking for
we
that.
had a couple lighting ideas. I know Anthony had been looking into it. I know one of our ideas was solar lighting. I personally think that is a great idea just because we don't constantly have to be switching things out, finding power, all that. But I personally don't know a whole lot about that, so that's what I remember from that. If Wendy, if you have anything else.
It's about $200-300
Yeah.
for a solar light.
Yeah, we have one on our flagpole and it stays on
Yeah.
the whole time through weather and everything, so, yeah.
So is that included in the 3,000
No.
or in addition to
That's
that, so
addition.
we were that close to
That'd be so-
3,500? I keep scratching out, guys.
Yep, that's right, let's keep making the costs go up.
Right.
The other thing is, if you wanna do a plaque, that of course is
Yes.
extra money, and it depends on the size of the plaque and how it's mounted and all those things, so.
I wonder if we could get the camp to get some emblems or something like that as well, or even the academy just south of them.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
help or donate.
It seems like even some of it, even like the plaque, maybe you could do it in increments, maybe this year you get this part of it up.
Yeah.
And then next year you can add to it as even a decade thing or any, a sponsored thing, you can
Yeah, I love
add
that.
to that.
Do we have any veterans memorial in the cemetery area or anywhere
We
else in the
do,
city?
yeah.
Okay.
That's all the questions that I have.
Why didn't it work at the,
We just worry about maintenance,
The hike, yeah.
and the wind back in there and getting up there, and we want it to be accessible to as many people as possible.
to the veterans, honestly, you want the veterans to
So
be able to get
we
there.
thought
I
Valley
like
Ridge
that.
was a good location for it. We did that police recognition walk, was it last year?
Yeah,
Yeah, last
it was
year.
nice, yeah.
And it turned out really nice up there with the view and everything. We are still waiting to hear from Blake's favorite word, the damn engineer, about whether we can do it and coordinating with Riverton City since they're our partner there. So we've got some work to do still, but wanted to get your approval before we get too far forward. And
What's the timeline? Like if everything was good and we approved?
it wouldn't take very long to put up a flagpole. Justin said a couple days.
And is the city gonna erect that, or is it gonna be RFP'd out?
We
or-
could.
We can.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if it can't go in the exact location we want at Black Ridge, there's a lot of area around Black Ridge that we can put it, so.
I think you'd get some volunteer, I think people like Joe would show up and help.
I know Veterans Committee would show up, yeah.
I'd go help put it
Yeah.
up myself too, I would love to go up.
Yep.
So we don't have to spend so much staff, as I'm not getting up in a scissor lift or anything.
Do you
I
have
think
any
it's
other
a,
questions?
I think it's a no-brainer, I love
Lorna,
it,
Aaron,
I
Lorna.
absolutely, I love this too, thank you for bringing this, this
Yeah,
is,
of course.
I love when our residents come up with, a lot of people rely on the council to solve, so I love when this stuff comes from involved residents and
Especially our high school students.
Are you guys getting credit for this hopefully, right? As a project or
Kinda.
kind of?
We have a DECA class, so it goes a little bit, it's over, it was just first semester, so we're not even in the class anymore. But our project is turned in too, so this is just us keeping
Yeah.
going with it, so.
I love DECA. My wife was a DECA advisor for 10 years, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, it's given us so many great opportunities and I've learned so many awesome skills, so.
Kevin's great, you guys know that Kevin's great.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's no brainer, I'm great with it.
Yeah, I am too.
I'd love to just keep us updated on location, amenities, design, that kind of thing. I'd love to see how that's coming together.
Yeah, of course.
Do you have ideas for fundraising efforts?
We have contacted local high schools for donations and able to to kind of be sponsored a little bit on our plaques and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so we have gotten some donations from them.
What's your enrollment in your high school, do you know?
It's
Are they
like
over
2,000.
Yeah, I know
Around
sophomore,
2,000.
like 2 years ago, it was about 1,600, so I'm sure it's gone up since then, it's
yeah.
about 2,000.
Do you think you could get every student to donate $1 or $2?
$2 for
Yeah.
every
We
student
could,
there.
we could see about that for
We can
sure.
see
Yeah.
about
We
it.
can
Yeah.
talk to the SBOs about that.
Yeah, we'll look into
They were
that.
at the opening today, they were a pretty fun group, like
Yeah.
the SBOs,
They're
yes.
fun. Yeah,
And I
we'll
think
definitely
people
look
like
into
Steve,
that.
Good
Alex
idea.
would be all over something like this.
Yeah. I think there's some.
But I think it's-
some
I think it's-
corporate donations we could get, probably help with some of it, yeah.
But I think it's funner for the kids to
Yeah.
raise $1 or
Oh,
$2,
I agree.
Yeah.
it brings more value that way.
I definitely think so.
Or even a community outreach kind of
Yep.
thing, you know?
Yeah, of course.
We'll
Yeah, I
look
think
into
with
that.
approval, I think you can go to Facebook
Oh,
or Instagram. You might
Yeah.
not know what Facebook is.
Yeah.
But, and I think, I think.
Yeah.
A few of us are engaged on social media quite a bit, we'd help.
okay.
You could email us links to like a Venmo account or a, a PayPal type thing.
Yeah.
Or set up an account on like America First or something, a local credit union. I think this community would get behind it.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
We'll definitely look into that. I love that.
That's great.
I love it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
so
guys.
much.
Letting
We
us
appreciate you
see
And
coming.
your dad thanks for his service and your uncle,
Yes.
that's very nice.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Cool.
I said that whole group is just,
They're doing something right at that high school.
yeah, they are.
Because
Okay,
it's in my district.
Wait till redistricting goes.
we gotta change the Steve's gonna be taking credit for the kids. I can't imagine.
A lot of rumors.
Okay.
What's your child's
Just saying, now I gotta watch social media.
Wow.
That's fine. I went a different direction. Okay. well-
I did not see that one coming.
Tammy always takes a different direction. Okay, we'll move on to item 2.2, fleet purchasing discussion. Monty.
Mayor and council, appreciate your time tonight. Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see everybody too. So, what we want to discuss tonight with fleet purchasing, bring to your attention a couple of issues that we're dealing with. So this current year that we're in, we've ordered some vehicles and some equipment that, it's not gonna make it here in this budget year. We're gonna end up rolling it into next year. That causes a few different problems that we're dealing with. One of the other issues is we were just notified by one of our vendors that they're shutting down the order dates already for this coming model year. The factories have already reached their capacity, so it puts us in a bind because our budget year hasn't even started, so we're not approved to be able to order that equipment at this date. That'll put us further behind and it'll just keep pushing things further down the road. Most of the fleet that we operate, we're very diligent to make sure that we're trying to keep it as long as possible to get as much bang for our investment out of it before we surplus it. When we start pushing fleet further and further down the road, it starts putting us at risk for unnecessary repairs and some breakdowns that can hurt some of the departments for being able to accomplish their tasks. So one of the solutions, talking to our vendor, is they offered up that they're able to authorize them to go ahead and accept a list of vehicles that we would be looking at ordering in this next budget year, and they would reserve those build slots for us at this point, with no obligation for us to be able to have to accept those build slots. We could cancel them at any time. So we wanted to bring that in front of council and get your opinion on.
When would there be a financial obligation?
So,
At what point does the city become obligated?
so technically, we wouldn't even be obligated up till the point they even build the vehicles. Because right now with the shortages, they would be happy to accept our vehicles into the dealership and then just sell them for a higher rate than what we would pay for. So there's no real concern there. one thing that we would have to do, and that is for them to go ahead and for the factory to, they accept the build slots, but before they'll actually put them into scheduling, they are worried that there'll be too many dealers that will fire over fake orders for them to go ahead and just reserve slots for their dealership. And so is what they've asked now is they sent out a letter that stated they would like a PO or a letterhead letter stating that it's Herriman City that's ordering this equipment and not just somebody else. At first they started doing driver's licenses, and then when they started getting copies of the same guy from the dealership getting 10 trucks, they realized that wasn't gonna work, so. But basically, that's what we're up against. So we thought we'd bring it before you and get your opinion if that's something that you're comfortable with us doing. Then we would go ahead and move forward with that.
It's exactly the same report I get in every report I'm on, so
Yeah.
I would say I'm good with that. I think that's a very smart move.
Okay. If anybody has any questions, be happy to.
I want tan leather with, get your order in.
Tan leather stains real easy.
I don't use it for work.
No, we appreciate it, Monty, thank you for putting that together, I think it's great.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
That was a little, Dodge trucks are nice too, just saying.
I love my Dodge. I love it.
Okay. You want one? Item 2.3, MDA updates, Blake.
Okay, so the name of this item is actually MDA work group, so. I got a few emails from developers that have other agreements and they're working on like Wasatch, and they're like, you talking about ours tonight? I'm like, no, I've got this work group. So, just so everybody knows, that's what it's about. So, there were a total of 6 meetings. There were the two projects are Laguna Malibu and the Auto Mall. So there were 2 infrastructure work group meetings with Laguna Malibu so far, since we started it. There were also 2 planning work group meetings, and then there were 2 Auto Mall. And Auto Mall combines the infrastructure and the planning groups together. So that's the brief overview of how many meetings we've had. February 1st, we had Laguna Malibu infrastructure and planning work group meetings. In the infrastructure meeting, we typically covered hillside overlay, what was the process to amend the boundary, because there's some areas in there when we made that hillside overlay boundary, it was kind of connect the dots where the 30% slopes were, so there's some areas inside of that overlay that are actually under 30% and are developable. But the way the ordinance is written doesn't really allow for that to be developed, so they're trying to find a way to refine that a bit and make it, because that was pretty, I don't know, coarse the way they did it, so trying to refine it so you can get, identify those areas better. Another big thing that was discussed in that meeting with the infrastructure group was road grades and widths. There's been a lot of discussion about the grade of the road. It's steep when you get back in there, and if that becomes a collector road, we have city ordinance that doesn't allow it to be over 8%. The school buses won't drive on a road that's over 8%, unless they have some other measures that are put in place, like chains, or we haven't had to deal with that yet. And another concern that we've had is with the road widths and the way that road cross sections look, does that severely impact the cuts and fills on the side hill? We want to kind of minimize that footprint and keep it hidden as they put these roads up through the hill, if the development is approved. We were notified at that time that they have a traffic consultant on board and they're doing a traffic impact study. We should see that in the next couple of weeks. We haven't seen it yet. And there were also discussions in that meeting about amenities and use in the ACUB purchased properties. And so I think that's gonna be a big discussion as we move forward with that development, is what does the council want there, what's the vision for that area, and how do we implement that? What part of this development is responsible for that? What's the city responsible for? In the planning meeting for that same day for that project, it was more ACUB discussion about the buffer and how to achieve their density or their number of units they're looking for, if there is a buffer put in place. We talked about clustering units and developer didn't seem to be very interested in clustering. They wanna do some larger style lots. And so that was all I had notes for that day. Planning group, was that. So the next day, February 2nd, we met with the Automall Planning and Infrastructure Working Groups. We discussed the UDOT parcels that were remaining. There's, called it the flag piece. We had the flag pole item back last year. This was access that comes from 126th to the north. Went right across the property where the gorilla wash is at. And so that was acquired from UDOT, but there's a piece at the very end that actually touches Mountain View Corridor. And so that's something that needs to be addressed. UDOT has told the city that they'll deed the pieces that are used for the road at no cost, but any remnant pieces that aren't used as part of the roadway would be purchased at appraised value. So we won't know that answer of how much property that is until we design Miller Crossing Boulevard, where it's
We can try and design it so that it encompasses the whole thing.
It's a pretty wide piece, so there will be some pieces that need to be purchased, and that will need to be discussed if that's needed for storm drain outfall, does the developer pay for it, does the city pay for it, how that works. There was also some discussion about storm drain. The storm drain is tied to that UDOT pond, and the town center stormwater flows down that direction, and we need to take it to the north to Midas Creek. So that's gonna be a pretty big item, and really it needs to get designed. And Jonathan and his group is meeting with the developers, engineer, and they're working through some design concepts. Figuring out how much water is the city's, how much water is theirs, where it needs to go, how it's gonna flow out. So, that's all in the works, but everything's still really high level with this project. And then the last discussion, that I had noted on was roads. And there's a proposed traffic signal that the developer is requesting at Automall Drive and 126th. UDOT's going to be doing a study on 126th from Vegator to Herriman Main Street. So there's been some discussions with UDOT about including that in their study. They said they did not include that in their scope, but they haven't scoped the whole project out. They don't have it in their original budget. So they may be requesting the city to put some money towards their study to look at that specific intersection.
The one where you kind of turn to Garage Grill now.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's so tight on those lights, the traffic flow would be so bad coming across Mountain View.
That's what the engineering department's concerned about. We've looked at
Yeah.
it. That signal will struggle in 2050 already, so remember that intersection will
Yeah.
struggle already. So UDOT, we'd like to have them included in their study and look at some alternative intersection options there. Maybe not-
Especially if they say that's gonna be like,
University Parkway.
University Parkway on that interchange, 7-8 lanes with 2-3 turn lanes. That's gonna be intense. I can see right-hand onlys and a lot of that, like center medians all the way through.
Yeah,
So
makes no sense, huh?
right now it's a mess trying to get into that apartment complex and then over to the Garage Grill and the barrier there
Yeah,
anyways.
keep waiting for Chief to keep having hot spots right there. Like, oh, cause when we came out of there the other night, I was like, ugh.
Yeah, and the lighting's not great because it's not all fully done yet, so there's more circumstances.
I know there's been discussion about, some of the dealerships are concerned if that doesn't remain a full access intersection, the left-hand turns everywhere. But if you look at how Mountain View Village is developed next to the Chick-fil-A and the Harmons, they have an access, it's
Right-hand
kind of
turn.
right in, right out, and then a little bit further, there's a full access signalized.
Yeah.
I think this can operate the same way, but it'd be nice to have UDOT include that in their study.
Agreed.
So there may be a request coming up on that in the future for some additional funding to put into the UDOT bucket, or UDOT might find funding for it. But that was the last item on that one. The February 8th meeting, we met with Laguna Malibu, and this was the combined meeting, so it was a pretty healthy meeting on roads again. And we talked a lot about cross sections. The developer is preparing cross sections, typical cross sections to bring back. We haven't seen those yet. We were supposed to meet yesterday they emailed, requested to push back another week, just to make sure they had everything wrapping up, but they wanted to make sure they went through it, QC'd it before they brought it to the committee.
They also talked about divided roads too, so it wouldn't all be, this going in would be on a different road than going out kind of thing.
And that would hopefully achieve minimizing cuts and fills and impact to the natural landscape. And could keep costs down for us for maintenance and for them for construction. So it could be a win-win on that.
How much of the road cross-section is determined by, traffic volume versus, utility, I guess, you know what I mean? Or how we define it.
So traffic
Because if
volume-
they're gonna build a certain number of units, it makes sense that there would be, a major collector versus a minor collector, right? And so I'm just curious, how does the unit count play into the road design?
So traffic volumes, there's certain numbers that as soon as you hit a volume, you really need to look at adding another lane or reducing your level of service down to an ERF,
Okay.
at certain times. So, but there's a big range there. So like a one-lane road, if you don't have left-hand turns except for every quarter mile, you can push a lot of traffic. I can't remember, it's like 8,000 vehicles per day. And so in some areas, you might be able to get it down to a one lane each way, and then get down lower, you might have to make it to 2 lanes each way. Just your volumes drop off as you pass the houses. So, yeah, their TIS should be able to identify a lot of that.
The other thing I think that we really have to keep considering is we have to have a really good understanding of what we wanna do where our property intersects right there too, cause if we wanna do a cool trailhead or something there, what we don't wanna do is shrink the road down so that, we have no availability for traffic to come in and out of that trailhead, and we're always having a bottleneck there. We just really need to understand what we wanna do there.
The other thing to really think about on that is, I don't know if everyone was around during all the Black Ridge excitement, but when we still have excitement up there. The houses fronting the road as you go up to those areas. Where we have the future trailhead plant on the, north side of Juniper Crest for the Juniper Canyon Trail. That area, we didn't allow Rosecrest to front any houses on that road. So it works more like a collector, it helps you get the traffic flow in and out, so you don't have cars, driveways backing up onto that.
Yeah.
Plus you can put parking on the road.
And parking, yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's important that we make sure we keep that conversation at the front.
Is that a discussion you want to bring back to work meeting?
Yeah,
What to do with that area, what are some possibilities with the slopes and?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be an important part of the infrastructure piece of it, because I think that, especially if, if we're talking about what's 2.5 it's a 2.5 acre zone right now, right? So if we change that and are gonna allow more density, then there has to be a give to the city, and if the give is gonna be access, that's not much of a give, right? It has to be something that's that equals the get, and so I think that if part of this is access and part of what they're saying is that, and we're gonna, this would be great access to your property, it's like, okay, but what's the access gonna look like and how, how are we gonna design that? I just think it's an important piece of it, we have to keep in mind.
Also, one aspect of access determines whether or not it's a system improvement or if it's a capital improvement, right?
Exactly.
And, I'm not so sure that access through that direction is needed, because there's access from lots of other places. And in terms of the cost of building a road up there, with slopes and distances and all that stuff, it's gonna be a really expensive road. I'm not so sure that there's much benefit to the city in creating a capital road up there.
But that's the question, right? It's
If there is a specific need up there, we need to know.
Is there a need? Do we want to have something there? Is there something unique about this piece that it's gonna attract and entice people to go there? I just don't wanna be short-sighted and go, geez, I wish we would've did a better road up here,
Ski Herriman.
Exactly. Sled hills, there's no more snow.
And I think this brings up a bigger, and Blake, thank you for preparing this, I think this is key, but I think these working groups, I think are only gonna be effective is if we have robust discussion at these meetings about this.
Yeah.
And it's more than just you reporting back, I guess. Like I said, thank you for doing this. I had it on the agenda to bring up and I forgot even at the beginning to bring it up. But I almost wonder if, again, I go back, do we need to make this a running agenda item while we have these working groups on the
Yeah.
work meeting?
I think that's our plan right now, is to have it listed and I will change the title. But
So that's kind of what the intent is of this.
correct, so the real question I had, do you want us to give a report like that? Do you want us to just write something up and then we could just provide a summary in writing and then it allows you just to have a conversation about it?
Yeah,
What
that,
would
I
be
think
more
that.
effective? Okay.
Yeah.
That's what-
Yeah, especially the two members or whoever was in those meetings could report back and the key points that are brought up as well.
I think that was our intent, was, yeah, you have two members in each one of these, and so it's nice to get everybody on the same page
Yeah.
now during these council meetings, because we can't have you all there at meetings.
And then we would choose to do that here in a work reading instead of doing it in where we do our other committee reports.
Right, where this is more
That
robust.
makes sense.
Well, are you okay?
I got a couple more things unless
Okay.
you're
And then
good.
let's I wanna kind of go around and kind of have some discussions about what you've.
Want me just to wrap up what I got?
Wrap up, yeah.
Okay, so for the Laguna Malibu, going along with the roads some more, Chief brought up some concerns about safe walk routes because we talked about sidewalks meandering away from the roadway and kind of coming back. And safe walk routes, as you get away from the road, there's less visibility, so we're gonna keep that in mind as they work through the design. Water, there was a quick discussion about demands and storage needs and things like that. Jonathan and Justin reviewing the calculations from the developer, or from their engineer, they were gonna go through. Stormwater, there was a lot of discussion about, we like what Olympia had done in their MPA, because they made their ponds so that they were usable during the day, when it stormed a little bit, or it rained a little bit, there wasn't a lot of standing water, so we wanna kind of follow a similar design if they do ponds in their developments. And then there was discussion about concerns with debris flow and sedimentation, just being up on the side hill, the urban fire interface. So we're gonna make sure they incorporate that into the design. And then discussion about keeping natural drainages natural, trying to keep those open. I was in St. George last week and was driving through some new developments down there and noticed some of those natural drainages were left wide open and they feel a lot more nice and open. Even if both some of the lots were smaller, so it's a good thing to do in these developments. And there was, I think Sherry brought up some discussion about 30% slope and how much of it's inside of each of their pods, and they did put together a table, and we haven't seen one yet. It should be kind of-
I just think it's, sorry, does this one interrupt?
Go ahead.
I just think it's really important because what they keep proposing is anything over 30% they can't build on. So some of the things that are, like, if you have this big property and this little hill is in the center of it, that could be graded because it's over 30%. So we just have to be careful, right? I just want to really understand exactly what you're taking out, how much are we really allowing to be graded off? I don't disagree that it makes sense rather than just build around every little hump, but we just need to be very clear on what's buildable, what's not buildable.
I'm sure another aspect of that too is they're talking about making what they're defining as bigger luxury lots, but the only buildable, developable part of the lot might be a small footprint at the very front of the lot, but they're still counting it as an acre and a half or 2 acre lot, but it's 70% of the lot is a 30% slope hillside, so.
Or deeper, like if you go up towards Butterfield, up Yellow Canyon, Yellow Fork, gosh, I think the houses they're building, if you jump over to where I live on that hill right there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just seriously drilled. They have to drill all that rock out of there.
Right.
And it's like, they have pretty big lots and my granddaughter was like, where are you gonna play? Cause it
Right.
seems like they're big lots, but there's no usable space
Right.
other than the side of the hill. Yeah, so, it's definitely a different idea behind
And-
a big luxury lot.
Yeah, and part of the concern I had is if somebody's going to invest that much in a luxury lot up there, they'd want to perhaps have other amenities or outbuildings or, you know, things like that, you know, sports courts and hot tubs, shops, RV things and stuff like that. So how does that affect, you know, into the hillsides and that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah.
That kind of segues into the next meeting we had was the planning working group. And we did talk about what defines a luxury lot and really providing those size of lots for those things. So that was a discussion in that group. And we talked about the number of lots that were being proposed in each pod and how they were gonna work. They were supposed to bring back a more refined plan. We'll probably see next week. We also talked about design guidelines. They had a list, but they didn't have actual guidelines put together yet. We're gonna be working through that list and then they'll put those together. And then the last meeting that we had was today, the auto mall planning and infrastructure working groups. And we talked about the current applications that are in, which are the 2 rezones for commercial and residential, and what the process was on those. And it sounded like they were good to let that go and roll in with the MDA and trying to get those ahead of anything. And then we had a pre-application meeting with them last week about the first dealership lot, which would be just north of Garage Grill. And so we'll see if that works through the process. They have some hurdles to get over because there's a lot of requirements in the auto mall special district zone that requires them to follow C2 requirements. And some of the building design and site design doesn't follow that. So that's something that when they get into the NDA, they're going to address those or change that section of the code. There was a pretty good discussion on the proposed residential use of the 15-acre parcel today. And then we backed away from that and got back to talking about the auto mall proper development. And there was a discussion about the property acquisition timeline that is taking place and what's to take place, and then the development timeline and milestones. And so it seemed like when we left off of that, things were heading in a good direction. We ran out of time, or we didn't run out of time, we just ended there. I think everyone got hungry for lunch and went to lunch, so.
Did get pushed back today because the ribbon couldn't go.
That's the summary I have of, so.
Blake, sorry, Mayor, is it alright if I piggyback on something Blake talked about, I'll be quick.
Sure.
So, I was just gonna talk quickly about Teton Commercial.
Oh, yeah.
So, we got a request to consider development agreement for a commercial project within the Teton development. What's the acreage on that? It's tiny.
It's like 20 acres, it's the corner just west of Herriman High School along 118.
So the reason I wanted to bring it up now is we obviously have a council policy that directs us to form these working groups to talk about certain, infrastructure, design guideline requirements. Looking at the draft development agreement and the draft design guidelines that they have, it would be our recommendation, mine and Blake's, we've talked about this previously and even Nathan's, that might not be required here, but really we're just asking for some direction what you'd like to do, because I think this is a small enough development agreement. It's a commercial project. Design guidelines that are just a couple of pages long. We're not looking at residential units. We're not looking at phases. We could bring a product that you could work on in a working group setting like this, probably in 1 or 2 meetings.
That's a question then, why do they need a development agreement as opposed to just?
Trying to follow
building
the
permit.
design guidelines that they've set forth in Anthem for their buildings, like their Tony Burgers and that stuff is. They're following that, and that doesn't have as much brick and stone as our current requirement has, so. And then they have some signing that they wanna put in, that they wanna kind of go above and beyond our monument signs.
They also mentioned some flexibility in the final parcel layouts as they work with different tenants. They would rather not have to go through a full parcel or full process if they just wanna move a line over to accommodate a bigger user here. Because it's up in the air a little bit, so that's part of what the MDA would line out, is how they could maybe move a lot line to accommodate a larger one than they're anticipating now, or if they end up with, instead of one big one and 2 small ones, they end up with 3 medium size. They're trying to get some flexibility so they can hit a market quickly. So the MDA makes sense, I think.
So that's really the request, or maybe an item for further discussion is, do you want to forego the working group procedure, which you can in the policy that's drafted in as part of that? or would you prefer to kind of dive into it in working groups?
Well, I personally think the whole reason behind them was for when we have bigger MDAs that are more complex and things like that, that are gonna take more input from the council, that we divide it up and conquer it, but if it's not very complex, it seems like just a few extra meetings.
Yeah, yeah, like I said, I think as we look at it, we could probably tackle it in 2 working group meetings like this and then run it through the procedural process from there.
Yeah, if you guys understand it from the development side enough and can convey their concerns or wants, and it can be in a working meeting.
No, just go through PC and then council.
Right, public hearing, PC
And I
level.
think that's good, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'd have at least a few touch base with you in here as that goes through, just to make sure everything's covered.
I have one more comment, and it's probably back to you, Blake, on this, I just thought about this, but one of the issues I think with, Laguna Malibu is gonna be the cost of maintenance for the city on that particular type of development. Is it gonna be more? Is it gonna cost us more? And if it's so, how are we incorporating that into it? Because that's another thing that's not a benefit to the city, right? And it's gonna be a cost to us, and so if our O&M is gonna be substantially higher, how are we gonna cover that in that development?
So there's many ways I think you can go around it, I think, and Nathan can probably speak to it, he may have some experience, but you can have assessment areas and things like that, I think, to incorporate that, recoup some of those increased costs potentially. For water, those types of things you can build into the rates, cause you can justify the type of, the increased cost to pump the water and the increased maintenance costs. For I think roads and streetlights and some of those other things, it's probably not as easy. Stormwater, we have a fee that we could incorporate, so, I don't know, Nathan, what are your thoughts there?
In it, so I agree with what Justin's saying there, I think some are easier to do. That distance, I think even looking at law enforcement, getting up into those hills, if you have somebody responding all the way up on top, that's a good 20-25 minute drive where you've taken a resource completely out that's not here now. So we would have to really look at the water as you get up into zones 8, 9, zones we don't have now. There's very few homes to spread that cost over, so it's gonna be somewhat expensive to structure it based on
pump
their
costs and things like that.
their pumping. So we'll have to look at that. It could be a special assessment or so. I've heard council mention that when we were first looking at this, we may need that.
Right, I just wanna make sure that we keep that in the forefront too, because we do not wanna be absorbing that cost on O&M with this type of development. We haven't worked.
Joe, I think there's if I can do my interruption now. There's a philosophical question that I think the council has to address with this kind of a development too, is as you said, it's currently zoned, FR 2.5, right? The overlays are recreation area. The concept, and an argument was made that wasn't really what it was for, that's just a holding zone. I argued that may not be the case. We have to go back and look at the minutes as to when those zones were created, but needless to say, if we can interpret that any way, but it looks clear that there's an intent for it to be recreational zone right now. They cannot they can't sell enough 2.5 acre lots up there to generate enough revenue to justify the development up there, right? So they have to develop a lot more lots. Somewhere along the line, there's gonna be a break-even number, right? And in order to get to that number, part of their presentation, this is what Mayor and I were discussing, was part of their presentation suggested a little lower down the mountain doing attached multifamily, higher density type of properties. And we asked the question, is that really in line with a luxury development, right? Those kind of seem antithetical points, right? So I guess the question is, would we hold to the line and say, if we are gonna make an adjustment to the zone, and it's for this, and I would give them ample credit for the level of detail they want to include in their design guidelines. I mean, they are extremely robust. And they intend some very tight controls. If they're gonna build luxury lots with those tight controls and this really specific aesthetic that they're looking for up there, would we wanna stick to that and say you have to find a way to make it work doing it that way? Or would we say, we're okay with you doing mostly that and doing some higher density units up on the hill? You know, eventually it comes to a point where we're gonna have to answer that question, and that could sink or swim the project.
I agree.
Is that fair enough to say that?
Absolutely.
I think that in general, we were expressing, an openness to discuss the luxury lot development, the promontory light kind of thing they were espousing. We wanted to understand what the amenity plans were, like what does the community get out of a development like this, right? Why, to your point, if we're gonna change zoning so substantially, what is the benefit to the community? But I guess I'm proposing this not necessarily as a decision point, but as maybe a discussion point. What's the council's kind of opinion on that? Where do you think we should be guiding them in those discussions, saying you need to find a way to make it work with only single family lots? I mean, some of their lots they were proposing were like 6,000 square foot lots, and that just doesn't seem to jive with what our expectations were either, so.
Is that lower
They're saying that's up high.
Yeah, they were asking for 4 units an acre, which would have, in developable land, would have been about 1,200-ish, maybe 1,100 something units. But in order to fit them up there, the only way they could do that was to cluster some of the units, which they said they didn't want to, and then the presentation we got at our last meeting had multifamily units in it, so, I think ideally they were saying it maybe in the 2.5 to 2.8 units per acre is I think where they're gonna end up targeting it, but.
And I think they had their table and they had multifamily in it, but the developer said, I didn't look at that table before and I don't know if he really wanted those in there. I think they surprised him. So they may have been in there, but I don't know if they were intended or.
I don't know if it was intended or not either, but it at least created an opportunity for us to have this discussion, right?
And I almost think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if we're there yet to know where they're going, cause it was, I was pretty confused, cause I think you and I both looked at each other, cause they're talking luxury lots, but that the numbers don't, the number of
lot
units don't
sizes and
add
stuff,
up
yeah.
to the, so I think, I don't even know what to bring, I thought about bringing it up tonight too, I don't know what to mention, cause I don't know that I don't know where they're there yet, cause I'm confused still as to what they're proposing as far as.
It sounds like they're getting a ribeye at McDonald's, right? They don't know where they're at, they're like, yeah, it's a McRib, yeah. But it's like, they're talking promontory, red lodges and the fill, and that's, I mean,
Right.
I think that's what we can see up there, visualize, right? And then you start to throw in multifamily and they're like, that's not the.
6,000 square
Yeah,
feet.
6,000 or 8,000 square foot lots doesn't seem quite right either.
Yeah. And, but I'm happy to look at it and see, okay, yeah, maybe that higher density down low and that lower Laguna or lower Malibu, whatever that is. And then up high, different lots, and maybe it is clustered housing, it's closer, lot lines are closer together, but still bigger single
I guess
families.
I'd be asking the question, lower down the hill, there's lots and lots and lots of density, right? All across the South Hills, zone, right? Even the single family homes that they had kind of suggested in our latest iteration were a lot of, 6,000 and 8,000 square foot lot homes, right? Still single family homes, which we appreciated their ideas there, but definitely a lot more density down the hill already. The question is, where do we draw, do we say, hey, no, we're not gonna do that, and there's no development? Or do we accommodate some of that to allow development? Where do we draw the line? I tend to feel that doing what's more in the best interest of the community overall and what fits into the community plan is a better course of action than trying to come up with a specific accommodation just to help one developer get a development done. Does that make sense? So, I don't know, are you guys in agreement with that? I just wanna be able to give them a little bit more detailed feedback in our next meetings rather than say, I don't have any idea what the council's gonna say on this, you know? Cause that's what Lauren and I were saying was, we see where you're going, but I don't know what to tell you other than these very broad generalized statements, so.
And I don't know, I'll be in that meeting, but I go back to any increase in density, there's gotta be an amenity, there's gotta be something to, and they keep saying it's gonna be amenity rich, what is that though? What is that? And I just,
And the difficult thing is, are those gonna be great community amenities to where like the city as a whole benefits from that? Or is it gonna be so
Private golf course, yeah.
inaccessible that it's difficult to, you know what I mean, it's more like an HOA amenity that the general public doesn't have a benefit to, and especially if there's gonna be increase in costs, tax revenue is gonna get spread out even further, those types of things, it's just a careful balancing act there. I don't know, and the same, it's like, I don't know, let me see the plan, or how does it make sense? What, you know, exactly what you're saying, how does it benefit the community?
Their toughest challenge is they have acreage, but usable acreage or developable acreage.
Yeah, we would figure out it's like maybe 1,100 acres total between the two, like 900 on one and 200 and something
it's
on the
almost
other.
300.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was just 1,000 acres.
Okay.
1,000 acres or so,
Some,
Oh, no,
but
that's
only,
units.
but only
Units is like-
350-ish developable.
But is that the under 30%, or are they
Yeah.
incorporating the?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they feel like they could, you know, when we did the numbers, they felt like they could actually get a little bit higher number by making lots up into the overlay zone.
Or even taking some of that 30% out of like the little fingers or.
Yeah,
like-
some of those
Yeah.
places, yeah.
And a huge chunk of that is exactly what you said, you just build the house back next to the undevelopable,
Yeah.
and then that's still their lot.
Right.
I don't know, again, that's how my feeling, I just have to see it.
Yeah, they gotta bring us a plan, that's I mean, they gotta decide what they want to do,
No more of those.
yeah.
one thing that could help out is, when we did the Mountain Ridge development, they brought in the layout for their lots and roads. This is more of a bubble plan, they could maybe refine it, maybe not down to the Mountain Ridge level, but show where some of the lots are. So,
We talked about some sample layout.
see how their plots lay out.
Yeah, cause they had the kind of the road going up through but they didn't have the topo on it, and it's looking at it flat, looks great, right? But then you see the heat density or the height density of the colors. But actually seeing the pod and kind of their lot layout, their street layouts, their auxiliary ones, and that would bring a lot more vision. Cause you can actually see how dense it is visually.
And another thing to consider on that is, when you go through the hillside overlay zone, it talks about going to certain vantage points in the city and being able to look up on the hill, and if there's something on the silhouette of the hill, they need to develop off of that, so you don't put a house or a road on that.
Yeah.
So, in one of our meetings coming up, I put that into Google Earth and laid it over and draped it, so you can see it from those vantage points and see where you can see the pods. So, yeah, we'll have to look at that as the pod layout, because some of it goes across the ridges, some of it not.
Is that an ordinance that we have, or is that okay?
It's the overlay zone.
Does that still fit in with the new zone or the new tool we're using?
Right.
Yeah, it's still.
Okay.
I think we just gotta see.
Yeah, we just gotta get more information. Okay.
Okay, along those same lines, I'll jump over if you want, just briefly, just council feedback as well. Right, real quick, after our meeting today with the auto mall with Larry, he pulled me aside on my way out and asked 2 questions for me to bring here to council. Cause we gave him the feedback, some feedback on the Crescent piece, 15 acres. Parking, we talked about parking being, the 2 deep, he had the 2 deep, he's in that proposal, he's got, it's almost 2 deep, so you'd have to park behind another, cause he's gonna have an ADU, right, everything's gonna have,
But he has a
the bottom
garage and
level-
then
The bottom
secondary
level's gonna have
parking.
an accessory unit, so you have to park forward by code, you have to park forward every unit, 2 for the main resident, 2 for the ADU. So it's double deep, right, and I just said that's not, and then, we pushed back on that, said, plus he's going 3-story, cause he doesn't wanna build a basement. Not cause he don't wanna build a basement, but the ADU,
Is
it
the,
could be the elderly
garage
that
level.
don't want a stair down or whatever, so that was, I said, well, like, I'm okay looking at residential there if you stay to two-story, even though if they go to R210, we can't. They can go up to 35 feet, I think, in R210 without even having to come, that's in code. So if we go that way, but if they're looking at folding it in the MDA, then we could say you gotta top out at 2. So he asked one, and I'll go back. He said, what if we just kick the can down the road on the garden plot? I said, yes. So so I think garden plot right now is off the table. That's what he told me today. That's where one of the apartments, he said that's off the table. He said right now, we can come back to that later. I think he felt the temperature of the room and knew where we were going with that. But then he asked if he were to go, and I have my opinion, but I want your opinion. He said if I were to go down two-story, keep everything two-story, eliminate the ADUs, but he says math-wise, he needs 120 units in there
On 15,
on 15 acres.
what's that?
8-ish.
8 exactly.
An R210 is 8, right?
Yep, R210 would be 8. So we could do R210.
Carry it all the way out.
The pros are, and I'm just trying to be full.
Put a dollar sign up.
The pros are, I think at that point you get rid of the remediated soil. That we,
No.
that's about the only pro.
It's 15 and a half acres.
But
Oh, that's fine.
anyway, so I just wanted to get some, what's the zone next to it? What is it, Anthem?
To the east?
Or Miller Crossing to the north?
To the north.
North, I think, is R210.
I think there are 210s there. You can look right there.
So-
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That little section.
Yep, it is. Yep,
R210, oh, he's got it, that's
It's
Joe.
R210.
And so, that's what so for the residents, that zone, it matches the zoning to the north. The density will be higher, cause Anthem is only 4.7, I think Michael said today, they're only 4.7, 4.8 in that overall. So that would, but I don't know that,
What's the density right behind that fence line? It's less than that though, it's
Yeah.
probably like 3.
yeah, they're bigger
Miller
lots, a
Crossing
little bit.
piece, those are the larger single families, so that's their lowest density product in that whole development, is right there.
So
And
these
their
would be
main complaint was
single-family
the
homes. These would be
3-story.
single-family homes, just smaller lots.
So you met with the residents at resident meeting.
Mhm.
What was their main concerns?
Well, they don't want 3-story.
Yeah.
And then they're concerned about traffic, but we talk traffic truly
It's in and
commercial
out right
versus,
there on, yeah.
commercial versus that residential is not gonna be much different.
Yeah.
So I think you can throw traffic out, cause that's not gonna be, there's not gonna be any going through their neighborhood. It's gonna be all coming onto Parkway. So if we can keep it under, that was their main, cause they didn't want 3-story looking down. And then the parking is,
The question I have is about that. If that road's gonna be as busy as it's projecting to be, how do you get all those cars out across the road to go eastbound?
With no stop sign or stop lights.
They'll work, I mean, it happens on Redwood Road or State Street, you can do that. And that volume has always been anticipated there in the growth projections. This actually is a reduction, I would imagine, from filling that up with all commercial use.
And he's got 3 entrances, we may wanna think about, do we
We'd have
really
to
want
look at
3
that.
entrances onto that road?
he only showed 2 today.
Probably with
You'll have to
the,
have
he's
two.
gonna have to,
Two
because
ends of the crescent,
he doesn't have enough space, I don't
They'll
think.
have to have 2, and if they needed another third access, there actually is an easement that runs out to 5600 West along
Along
the
the
north
fence out
parcel,
there, yeah.
across that the other owned parcel. The corner is owned by someone else,
It would be my general comment. I think that the product type is actually needed in our community. I think there's actually, it is a real solution for housing affordability as opposed to just let's build more of a certain kind of unit, right? This actually does provide rental units and it provides an income for people to be able to afford their primary.
Well,
No,
the ADUs are
they're-
gone.
the
ADUs are gone.
There's no ADUs at
No
all.
ADUs.
No
No,
ADUs.
cause when it goes down to 2 stories, they ADUs.
So these are all multifamily.
That's why he's wanting to go up in the units.
Well, are they gonna
Well,
be
they're single
multi-family?
family.
They're
It's just
single
a
family,
family.
but
Are they gonna be
had
twin homes,
something
though?
sugar.
Could, no.
They could be twin homes, because that still falls single family.
Well, based off, they'd have to do 10,000 square feet.
Doesn't
lots,
townhomes, single family?
Townhomes are not, there's,
That's
it-
what you're talking
But it's
about.
not.
well, twins, And then the lot size is the key factor. A lot of townhomes are 1, 2, 3, 4, like condos or fourplexes, or, so it depends on the actual style of the house.
What does R 210 allow?
10,000.
For a duplex, you have to have 10,000 square feet.
So they could be duplexes.
Yeah, but they're quarter acre lots, then you have a lot less units.
Squeeze 120
I don't know how they're gonna do,
He wants to have to be able to do like a tenth of an acre, like 4,500 square foot lots.
Sugar lot.
It's tough.
sugar lot.
Right? The only difference is that there's 2 laws instead of 1.
That's a little bit of a different thing, because then the community is essentially exchanging density for cleaning up the lot. I mean,
Which,
I
we've already given them a good carrot on that lot already.
Maybe even an ice cream sundae.
No cherries though.
Just play devil's advocate a little bit. It is the same zone as what's around. It's an R210.
It's true, but it's not the same type of density that's what's around it. It's the larger homes and stuff, the less dense stuff. It's kind of like the
There are some
transition.
to the 5,000 square foot lots right adjacent to it.
To the east.
what's the zone, just curious, like the community where we went over that had the road with the fence below it, you know, that mismatch that we went over, that
That
was
was
the
part of
senior
North
community and so on. What's the zoning there?
That was all PUD, so I think it's all R210 as well.
R210, but
They
it was planning.
were able to move it around because it was plan development.
How many units are they looking at?
120.
120? See, even my HOA is only 7 acres and we've got 147. And they're twin homes and single family. I mean, it's doable on that space. I don't know about the actual layout and roads and whatnot, but it doesn't feel.
And I don't think the residents were against, like, I don't think they would be against 2-story. I mean, we go back to them, I mean, it's easy to go back to them, we got so many emails from that group.
Yeah.
Gets pushed back, but again, I'm not saying I'm on board with 120 myself, this was just proposed today, I'm trying to wrap my head around it myself.
I think I hate turning commercial then to residential, right, especially on 126, but it's probably a better fit and feel there for its residents, but it's.
So, would you want this to be part of the Auto Mall MDA,
That's
or
what
would
I'm
you want this to
wondering.
be
Is
its
this a separate
own
thing?
separate zoning? I mean, if it's part of the Auto Mall, then there's gotta be a 20% open space issue, right? And having 20% open space up by the creek on the north side of the Auto
It's
Mall
nuts.
isn't useful to the units over
Well,
there, right?
I think that's why he's wanting to roll this into the MDA, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's why, cause in MDA you can basically throw out that 20%, right?
You're only required,
you want.
you're only
Yeah.
required to do the 20% if you do a PUD.
Yeah. So that's why I think
So
he's
if
rolling
he
it.
does a rezone.
I think 15 acres on its own might have to be a PUD there, would be
Yeah.
a good candidate for a PUD, and I think he's trying to roll it into the MDA to try to
So
say.
it doesn't have to do the,
And there's
open
he's
space,
showing an
but-
open park in there, and Michael gave him good feedback today about, like, it's behind the houses, and that doesn't feel, like, that's not usable open space. You're gonna feel like you're playing in somebody's backyard, like,
right?
the outside residents
Yeah.
aren't gonna go through somebody's yard to this open space.
Yeah,
So
and
he'd have to improve the layout, honestly, too.
And that's a big feedback from that whole area, cause we finally got that one park, but that's desperate needs of open space for all the people that are already in that area.
Yeah.
There's an insufficient.
And like I said, so he'd have to come back, if we were to say, you know, shoot for a plan with 120, but it's gotta be better designed with some open space. And on him, I'm just saying, this is what he asked me at the end of the meeting.
It-
Garden plots down the road, which is, to me, is a huge hurdle, anyways.
How do we help him facilitate what he's trying to do and still get
That's what I'm
something
trying to-
that meets with the community's expectations of it? We've talked about this a lot, is that if we're gonna change zoning to accommodate more density, there needs to be a trade-off, right? And I'm having a hard time understanding where the real trade-off win is. Second thing is when we've talked about when there's higher land use intensity, we also need more public amenities and open space to relieve the pressure and provide recreation for the people living in these higher densities. And I don't see that well developed, at least in the proposals that I saw earlier. I haven't seen any updates there. But I think those would be the real issues, is to say, what does the community get out of it, and how are you going to provide some open space amenities that would better serve that land use intensity, right? Those are my questions.
Yeah, I'm pretty uncomfortable with it, but I'd like to see a plan. We always hear lots of, hey, how about if we do this, what about if we do this, but I just wanna, let's work forward on the MDA, where is that in the process? What's the plan for this whole thing, cause I don't wanna just,
Was the MDA the right tool, right? Or
Yeah.
it should be a PUD?
well, and or it feels
Separate,
like,
right.
are we gonna do this separately, and this is, he wants this, or is if this is gonna be part of the Automall MDA, then let's continue down that path, and I thought that that's what you said he agreed to, was the MDA. So if we're gonna
Right.
go down that path, let's go down that path and see it as a whole product, rather than trying to piecemeal, hey, would you guys do this here, this there, let's see the product.
Okay. We good on that, so we can beat that dead horse?
Yep.
That was good, thank you though, Blake, that was, and I think this is good, hitting on, I think this gives us good momentum now to handle this.
I'll a lot more.
Okay.
Cody's is only gonna be
Cody
2
says
minutes.
Do you have time?
He says 5 minutes.
You know how they talk.
I
Two
don't
and a
have
half.
time, so we're gonna have.
Two and a half.
You say
got
this
it.
This is my item, not Chief's, so.
Are you kidding me?
If Chief doesn't talk, we can get this done in 5 minutes.
Hey, Cody, put on a clinic.
Ready, set, go.
We always do, but this time.
Okay, thank you. Hard to believe we're in our 4th year of operation already, as HPD, but we're starting to get to the end of the life cycle of some of our capital equipment. And so, as we've had some discussions with Nathan as part of our 10-year strategic plan, the thought was to bring some options to you as far as philosophy of how you want to look at replacing capital equipment for the police department moving forward. So those are all outlined in the staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and if not, look for some direction as to where you would like us to go.
I think it makes sense. I think it's smart.
So would you, I think the question is, do you want it to buy it as it comes up, which it's just typical, right? Or do you want us to structure plans and
Yeah.
the tasers, I think, is a great example, and Chief, I think you mentioned this last time, that the cheapest thing we give the officers is the guns, right? Either of their guns, right? Their
Yeah.
rifle or
They're
their.
both cheap. The taser is about $1,700 as a unit.
And it's
so-
good for how long?
5 years, and it's not that it doesn't work, but after 5 years, the warranty on it reaches its end of its life cycle. So Taser, as an example, carries a $10 million liability policy, which extends to us as a customer. But that policy only is in effect for devices that are within the warranty period. So if we have an incident with a Taser that's outside the 5-year warranty period, that $10 million liability insurance policy does not apply to us. And we would be on the hook for whatever came out of that. So that's an example of
was a little stronger,
useful life cycle.
Some of the other things is like our police radio, it's $3,800 for the cheapest one from Motorola. Motorola runs a form factor of 7 years. After 7 years, you cannot use that piece of equipment anymore. You can get, I don't know.
You can't, I say,
can.
you can get better, but you
I
can't
know.
pay more.
Yeah, and so
Motorola is super expensive.
Motorola's is a great unit. What's that? Shh.
You're not supposed to be talking. It's Cody.
Oh, yeah, but it's a great unit.
We're just trying to accelerate it
It's
here.
fine. No, so the idea was, we can purchase them, in small group batches as they come up. That's obviously the cheapest option. That would require us to maybe cycle some equipment before the end of its useful life cycle in order to not have to buy 30 computers in 1 year and 5 in the next, right? The other option is to buy in bulk, and there's a couple of different outlines that are there. We can buy them as a one-time capital purchase, which for tasers right now is about $180,000 in a single budget year to cycle out our entire batch of taser products, or the industry, like is written, is kind of moving more towards this subscription model, which eliminates all of the administrative overhead costs that we have for maintaining and repairing equipment, and really puts all that back on the vendor. So if we have a taser that breaks or a battery that needs to be replaced, we just send it back and they send us a new one. There's a slightly higher cost for a subscription model, but it eliminates some of that administrative overhead. So that's really where the industry's leaning for tasers, body cams, radios, computers as a whole.
Your laptops, you might be able to role, kind of, depending on when you bring on an officer, those are a little different. The tasers and the radios have always concerned me wherever I'm at, because they do. You get 7 years and all of a sudden Motorola decides we're changing that shape.
Yeah.
And so the batteries, we don't sell the battery for your radio anymore, so therefore
Well, we're
we get
seeing
to
that
buy new
right
ones.
now, the state as a whole is upgrading the emergency communication system, and so, for those agencies who don't have devices that are compatible with the new system, they're looking at, millions of dollars in equipment, change outs. We were a little more forward thinking and spent a little bit extra money in 2018 to make sure that ours are compatible with the new system that the state is building, but, that's just an example of how the technology evolves and changes in law enforcement, so.
So are you recommending the subscription service?
We would prefer that in most cases. Now, there will certainly be one and twos, like with computers right now, we have a really good system set up with Scott Munson's group and some technology contacts that he has, so we feel like we're in a good place there. But we're in areas where it makes sense, there's a little bit of a higher cost, but we feel like the benefits are worth it. So that would be our recommendation, yeah.
I think the whole world's going subscription based. I hate it personally, but it's.
Cloud storage and subscription models is really the future of at least IT.
The only concern with like the subscription based or open credit card is proper oversight in the department of who's signing off on what's getting done.
Luckily, all that comes through me.
Yeah.
Typically you sign a contract, so it's not like the software as a service that we're buying. So with Taser, we would sign an agreement for 4 or 5 years. There are certain things spelled out in that agreement, and when you come to the end, you have to renew it. So that would again be in a budget and in front of the council. I think that's typical also, the ones you usually see this with your tasers, your body cams, sometimes your car cams, because the body cams and the car cams need to talk together, and so you can't have one brand of another. It's somewhat.
Our body cameras, we're actually starting to see a life cycle of about 2 years.
Is that 'cause battery usage?
They're being used heavily, and so the battery usage, they do take some physical abuse as well, as you can imagine, being out in the weather and dealing with some of the things that we have to deal with. So, with the subscription model on body cams, for example, a vendor would send us an entirely new batch of body cameras every 2 years under the subscription model, and we wouldn't have to worry about replacing them as they break, so.
Curious though, with this incremental replacement that you put on the report here, is that similar to what the subscription costs might be?
It's the lower end, right? So the incremental replacement, that's basically the cost if we were to use option one, which is we buy a few every year and then replace a handful of each device. But what we don't get is if it breaks, I send it and they send me a new one, right?
Totally
If it breaks, I have to pay to replace it.
And I would understand that the subscription might be a little more expensive. I'm just curious as to.
It's in the ballpark. So the subscription for
Maybe
Taser
$150 or $160
is about $47,000 a year.
Okay.
On a 5-year contract. If we were to buy the tasers outright for that $180,000, our incremental replacement is in that same neighborhood. It's about $39,000 to $40,000.
And that's what I'm saying, is it's an incremental cost just to make sure that all the equipment's always maintained, it's always up to standard.
Correct.
Lower return, there's, automatic warranty stuff is taken care of, right? All of that is just, I don't wanna have anything that would be a deterrent to the effectiveness and equipment of our police force, right? I
And,
mean,
and we're
that's
doing a
just
good job,
not-
but we are spending, between myself and the administrative sergeant and a citizen volunteer who helps us with some of our tech stuff, we are spending a significant amount of time already doing cataloging, inventory, replacement, repairs, shipping batteries and cameras back and forth, et cetera, et cetera.
This would be cost savings for that, and you spend a little bit more on the subscription, you're not spending as much time on the other, right?
Yep, right.
And
That's
also
the theory.
less likely for the equipment to
Yeah.
break down too, right?
Easier to budget as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, and there's a storage issue associated with some of that too, right? We had a model in 2018 for example, storage of our body cameras that was sold to us as something that it's turned out not to be. And so that puts a significant burden on our IT staff for some of that storage, where under a subscription model, we wouldn't have to deal with that. It would be stored off-site.
And all those Terra things we get back, right?
We sure do. We sure do. We'll empty them out so Alan can have them back. Scott will be nice. Okay, thank you.
Subscription, okay. Thank you, Cody. Appreciate it. Chief, thank you. Okay. temporarily adjourn, right?
Second.
We'll have to come back to, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we got one more item on work meeting, won't be here.
We have to come back for close later.
She was typing away, click it, clack it.
151,
It is 151.
is it good or bad?
It's actually good. So, but it's gonna require